Morgan three-wheeler review. Pull open a small drawer in the Autocar office and hundreds of index cards are revealed, cataloging more than a century of this magazine's content. And there, nestled between Moon and Moskvich, you'll find two cards marked Morgan that are annotated with the past road tests and features we've written about the Malvern manufacturer and its products. But a three-wheeler has never been road tested by Autocar. This is despite the fact that three-wheelers were the vehicles with which HFS Morgan formed the company and were on sale for 40 years. That a three-wheeler is back is cause for celebration, even by the standards of a business that regularly treats us to thrilling drivers' cars. Few hold the same promise of purity and intimacy as the Morgan three-wheeler, because few follow so closely the original formula like it does: grunty, two-cylinder power driving the rear of a lightweight roadster chassis. However, this formula is set to be diluted somewhat with Morgan's introduction of an electric three-wheeler named the EV3. With two wheels at the back it sounds terrific, but with one? Let's see how it stands up to the scrutiny of the toughest test in the car media business. Early Morgan three-wheelers looked little like the latest three-wheeler. It wasn't until the Super Aero of 1927 that it began to take on the shape we today recognize as that of the classic Morgan, low-slung to aid grip, handling and, crucially, stability. And compared with the earliest cars, it's relatively aerodynamic, too. So from the late 1920s onwards that's how the sportiest Morgan three-wheelers looked, and that's the basic design that has been mimicked today. To call it retro somehow doesn't seem right. It isn't a pastiche of the original like, say, a Fiat 500 or the latest Minis. Instead, it just follows the original formula, a steel tubular chassis, some ash framework and an aluminium body. It's pure, honest, authentic and real. In the same vein, the engineering beneath, and in front of, the Morgan's nod to styling isn't a pastiche, either. Morgan has taken what it believes to be the best V-twin for the job. Now, as then, it's a motorcycle engine. But now, unlike then, it's made by American engine maker S&S. S&S started out tuning Harley-Davidson motors, but after a time, as such companies do if they've got the new, it began making entire engines. Today, if you buy a complete S&S motor, it'll have the same pushrod V-twin layout as a Harley unit, but none of the internal components will necessarily come from Harley. This one is pure S&S, and built to a unique Morgan specification. It's a lazy, old-fashioned motor, square of cylinder dimensions and with two overhead valves per cylinder, operated by push rods. As a result, it makes a leisurely 82 bhp, combined with a healthy 103 pounds-foot of torque, peaking at just 3,250 revolutions per minute, a grunty set of stats for a bike motor. That's mated to an MX-5 gearbox via a transitional case that contains a damper necessary to smooth the big V-twin's otherwise peaky torque output. From the box there's a bevel gear to change the direction of rotation, then a belt driving the single back wheel, which is suspended by a trailing arm. Front suspension is by wishbones, and there are coil springs all round, and no driving aids. The EV3 is a different kettle of fish, with the motorbike engine and manual gearbox removed and an electric motor and battery pack added. While other details remain sketchy at best, Morgan claims that its performance will be comparable to the conventional petrol version and have an operational range of 150 miles. What's most notable about the performance of the Morgan three-wheeler is not how much it has, but how it's delivered. Thumb the starter button and the S&S motor spins lazily as it tries to bring to life two cylinders that displace a liter each, the flywheel and the rotational damper. It usually takes a few seconds to start, upon which you're rewarded with fulsome, lumpy and delightfully characterful whumps as the motor idles. Throttle response is terrific, not too frantic, not too lazy. There's a tendency for motorbike-derived motors to have hyperactive reactions, but the size and configuration of the Morgan engine help it to avoid such traits. It spins with just the kind of response you'd want and is lively to a tickle of the throttle, but with enough inertia to resist stalling when you let the clutch out to get moving. The clutch is well weighted and the 5-speed gearshift slick, as you'd expect from an MX-5 unit. The Morgan licks along at a healthy pace given that it totes only 82 bhp, assisted by the fact that it doesn't weigh much more than half a ton. Its track acceleration figures show that it's slower than most of its rivals. A 0 to 60 miles per hour time of 6.0 seconds wouldn't have a warm hatch writing home these days, but the Morgan feels livelier than that. It's always eager, always keen, and seems to have oomph in reserve at any point in its rev band. It'll roll along at 80 miles per hour or more with no worries and was always as fast as we felt we wanted it to be. And all the while it's an utterly charming power plant. The heady thrum of the V-twin engine when you work it, particularly the exhaust burble on the overrun in between shifts, is magical. Meanwhile, not being particularly fast means that it's possible to enjoy more of the three-wheeler's performance for longer, in the same way that a 1.6-liter Caterham 310 is the most appealing in the range. You feel like you are getting the best that the Morgan has to offer on almost any given road with a national speed limit.